Many of us go through each day with a pretty annoying script playing in our heads. It skips around on repeat, subconsciously saying things like, my dad was right about me. I'm terrible at everything. I'll never be good enough. Or nothing goes right for me. While it's okay and probably healthy to have the occasional moment of self-doubt most of the time, you really need to get these toxic thoughts out of your head. Why? Because toxic thoughts left unchecked and unregulated can negatively affect all aspects of your life. As Philip Viana noted in lifehack.org, it becomes a cycle where negative thoughts reinforce negative emotions, which in turn produce negative actions. If the cycle is not broken and left to run uninterrupted, it will inevitably have detrimental physical and mental effects on the person experiencing the spin. In addition, if these cycles spin often enough, they can lead to clinical depression and anxiety. However, eliminating toxic thoughts is easier said than done. Sometimes these thoughts are the result of words being spoken over you many times as a child, and thus have had a long time to take hold in your mind. Or sometimes these thoughts are a product of poor self-worth. These negative thoughts and beliefs can be so deep-rooted and can be so ingrained in you that you don't even notice that they're there. But it's in these situations that the untangling of these negative thoughts is most needed. Cognitive behavioral therapy, known as CBT, can be a powerful tool to help you identify and overcome these destructive thoughts and help you on your way to happiness.
Before I came to Beautiful Minds, I was suffering from PTSD and high anxiety, and it caused me to vent out against my family. I was fine at work, started getting really sick at work, and then I brought it home to basically my family. I was screaming at my family and had no patience for my 4 children, my wife, and actually my wife left me in August and took my 4 children. And that was a real wake-up call. As a child, I'd suffered from sexual abuse from multiple people. And I had an overbearing father who was very militant, didn't understand why I was the way I was, didn't understand that I was acting out all over the place, and it was more of a shame on you kind of thing, and instead of trying to understand what I was dealing with and where the root was. And I ran away from home for a couple of years when I was 15. Started doing hard drugs, started working for drug dealers. I was assaulted many times in the streets living there. And even though it's a small town, there's a lot of drugs and a lot of violence. I've been shot at, I've been stabbed, I've been cut up, I've been burned. Even from all the problems that I had as a kid, and the trauma that I suffered was nothing compared to losing my family. That was, I was horribly suicidal. I was taking it on myself, blaming everything on myself, and my whole life I vowed to fight monsters and destroy monsters, and I'd become one. So the next thought was take that monster out of my family's life, and that was I wanted to end their pain and mine in some way.
Why did you feel like a monster?
Because I made everyone feel like on pins and needles in my house. No one could relax. Everyone was always worried about how I was feeling that day as to how their day would go. You know, and no one was telling me the truth about certain things because they were so afraid of talking to me. You know, even the littlest thing would happen in the day and they would just not tell me about it because they're so afraid I would hit the roof and start screaming.
What I want to say to you is I've seen in the past that a lot of people were dehumanized because of mental illness, and now it almost seems like we're going to this other stage where my label, my name is my depression, my anxiety, what is your name, you know, sort of thing. And I never want anybody to think that that has to be their label. Even commercials often label us, this is I'm depressed, or I have anxiety, or something like that. All of these things are remedied. All of these things are curable. They take lifestyle modifications. They take thinking modifications, but they are all reversible. And I am living proof of that because I've had my own depression and I've actually had my own anxiety. And my anxiety was worse than my depression. I had a lot of anxiety. I even had OCD for a while. And a lot of people grow out of OCD. But all of these things are curable, but they're not often taught as curable because people can make some good money off of you always having this. But a therapist, actually therapy is one of the most beneficial things, and the cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the most beneficial ways to get through that. But I never want anybody to think that they have to live with this forever. It is something that you can get rid of and something that you can not have to deal with later on in life.
CBT is pretty interesting because we have a general idea that when something happens, that event will create all your emotional problems, right? That's the general idea. However, the fact is that our emotions have little to do with the events that are happening outside of ourselves, but it has more to do with the way we think about that situation. So you can control and learn to control your emotions if you are more aware of how you think. And CBT is all about that. It's about bringing awareness into your beliefs, the way you do things, why you think certain things. What are you thinking? Are these thoughts negative? Are they distorted? Are they completely based on reality, or are they based on your emotions? So when you're aware of the way you're thinking, you'll be able to analyze it and see, okay, I'm feeling like this because this is what I think.
Tell me the kinds of things you would say.
I made my wife question her own life and question, even want to kill herself, and belittled her. I blamed her for everything from the bills, because we were in financial trouble. I blamed her for that. I blamed her for being unhappy. I blamed her for raising the kids wrong. I basically took everything that was I didn't like about myself and turned it on her, and blamed her for all of my problems. And
can you repeat some of the exact words you said to her?
You're stupid. You're a worthless parent. You can't do anything right. You're ruining me financially. You're ruining my life. You make me unhappy. I can't stand to be around you. You drive me crazy. Basically made her question everything about her own self, even though she knew that I had a problem. And she'd been begging me to go to therapy for years. But I said, I never need a therapist. I will never go to a therapy. I will never go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I was hell-bent on that.
Would you curse at him?
Oh yeah. A lot of profanity. I use the F word a lot.
To your children?
Oh yeah.
How old were they?
They range in age. I have 4. Right now they're 10, 12, 14, and 17. How young was the youngest that they were hearing those words from you? Oh, since the time he was probably 5 when he started really hearing me start to erupt, and it only got worse over time.
And you would say it to him, you would use the F word and you would say it to him?
He was so little, I didn't scream at him as much because he was so little, he didn't know anything. But it was more of his older siblings that I screamed at.
So they might have been, what, 8?
8, yeah.
And then they would hear the F word being said to them, or... Mm-hmm.
And they basically would go, I would get angry, and I had a man cave out in my garage, and I would go to work, come home, go to the man cave. After I would scream at everybody and go to the man cave frustrated and angry and tired. And then they would basically cuddle up with my wife, and they would just cry together. And she would tell them that it's okay, it's not your fault. Daddy's just angry and daddy doesn't understand, or daddy's just sick. And that's really, really hard.
Have you been enjoying this series? My wife and I feel so honored that we're able to bring this to you. We know how much it changes lives because it's changed our own life. We're here to show you that there is hope. There are tools and strategies that you need to be using today in order to not only protect your health, but to also come against depression, anxiety, mental health issues, and also neurodegenerative issues like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, and macular degeneration. These things are serious conditions that we all face today as human beings being alive today. And my hope, my prayer is that you continue in this journey, that it doesn't end here. And that's why we want to make this available to you. We've created a really special offering right now so you can walk away, take the series with you, keep it in your own home library, and also so you can share it with your friends, your family members, and get access to extra tools that we have prepared for those that have chosen to support the mission. The extra tools include the ability to read the transcripts, either the physical book or the digital online access, the ability to watch the episodes as much as you like, the ability to have the DVD set in your own home to pop into your DVD player, the ability to join us live on our question and answer calls as we go through modules with you to show you each step that you need to take step by step, and you go through with a group of people all committed to health and healing. You get that encouragement from other people like-minded to help lift you up, to help give you answers. And you learn directly from our doctors and experts where you can ask questions, your own question, audibly on the line, or write your question and have your question answered as you go through this journey in our live question and answer calls with our doctors that happen weekly when you take action today during our module series that follows this amazing series. It's awesome. It's amazing. We're dealing with mental health issues on those calls, and we're dealing with neurodegenerative diseases, and we're collecting the best protocols that will help you approach both of these sets of diseases, both the mental health issues and the neurodegenerative issues. These are wonderful tools, synergistic, it works together, and it's helping you heal. So enjoy this episode as we help you heal, help you understand the root causes and the root solutions, the root core solutions that help you to answer the underlying factors for why these conditions may be happening in your life or the life of someone you love, so you can address them, uproot them, supply your body with the vitamins, the nutrients, the vital phytochemicals that it needs, and then expect amazing changes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to you enjoying and getting results from what you learn in this very episode.
Dr. Aaron Beck, who is one of the founding fathers of CBT, he developed cognitive behavioral therapy in the 1960s, and he actually identified 10 common cognitive distortions that people struggle with. And so we actually teach people what those are. Dr. Nedley reviews them in the lectures, and then we also, us cognitive behavioral therapists, lecture about them as well. And we start pointing at them and saying, which ones do you struggle with? And then of course, during regular dialogue in the therapy room, we also help the client see where they might be doing some or having some of the distortions, such as, oh, you know, you just said you're never going to get better. So what kind of distortion do you think that might be? Do you think that a thought was helpful, or was it true? And then we help them start catching themselves, even their automatic thoughts and their self-talk, what they're experiencing, even as they talk to us in session. So we help point those out and help them practice catching those thoughts for themselves.
Great, it's fascinating. I think it's incredible, and I think it's just it's so beautiful. And I think the tragedy is so people do it so late in their life or never do it at all. Mm-hmm. Do you notice the difference? Can you tangibly see the difference?
I can see a difference. Yeah, and then of course they confirm that they express that, yeah, I'm feeling a lot better. This is making sense. It's still challenging, and I think that's why. Some clinicians struggle with CBT because it takes work, and there are other treatment modalities out there that seem to have a quicker fix, but I think there's beauty in challenging ourselves and really working hard at something, and because nobody's immune to even being trained in CBT. Nobody's immune to distorted thoughts and those core beliefs that can really creep up on you in moments where you might feel a little insecure about something that's going on in your life or whatnot.
So what are some methods that we can use to change distorted thinking? While doing cognitive behavioral therapy with a qualified professional can be incredibly beneficial in working through these thoughts, there are some things that you can do at your home that can help you starting today. One of the first things you need to do is to be able to identify if you have distorted thoughts. Oftentimes we have negative self-talk, meaning we speak harshly to ourselves in a way that we would never speak to somebody else. We may rationalize this as being honest with ourselves, yet most likely we're holding ourselves up to impossible standards, and we're more likely to give others leeway on the things that we see as failures, but when it comes to ourselves, we're very vindictive and harsh. Here are a few common distortions pointed out by Psychology Today. Filtering. With filtering, we tend to focus on all the negative components of a given situation and filter out all the positive aspects. Thus, most situations will appear to be negative experiences. For example, someone may give you 10 compliments and 1 criticism, and it will be that 1 criticism that you remember and hold on to from that experience. Polarizing. This is also called black and white thinking. It means essentially that we believe that we have to be perfect or we're a failure. This can lead to the belief that if more than one situation is not working out the way you anticipated, you're a total failure. Overgeneralization. This is the tendency to take the experience from one event and assume that it's a predictor for all future events. This can be related to using the terms like always and never regularly. Jumping to conclusions. This is where we may try to assume that we know what someone else is thinking or feeling without sufficient input from the person themselves. Often we may come to believe that our interpretation is fact and that we will react to the situation before truly understanding the other person's thoughts and feelings. Catastrophizing. This is the what if rabbit hole. What if I move, then I don't like it there and I don't find friends, and then I lose my job and I'm stuck there alone with no friends in a strange place with no job? It's a mindset that takes a simple decision like asking for time off work and assuming that if you do, you're going to get fired. These are just 5 common distortions. For now, take some time to ask yourself right now if you have any of these types of thoughts. Take the time to write down and explore when you've thought this and why. Then the next step is to start to be able to look at the reality of the situation and what really happened as opposed to what you're thinking. This is just a starting off process that you use to work on your own thinking processes. Can you help me to identify some distorted thoughts?
We have name calling. Name calling is another one. That's just making judgments on either yourself or other people. Pretty harsh labels too, whether or not you have enough facts or evidence to create a label for somebody. But you might even have a little bit of evidence and then you judge them harshly for something. And then another cognitive distortion is magnification, minimization. So Dr. Nedley actually calls this one majoring in minors and minoring in majors. So magnification, you tend to blow something small, you blow it up, make a big deal about it, whether it's a mistake that you've made or a blemish that you have on your face. People tend to also blow something up in other people. You know, if another person makes a mistake, then they're berating them for that. And so you can see how distortions also mix a lot of the time, because as you magnify a mistake that somebody else has made, you also are name calling. And then you might throw in a should and must as well. You know, you shouldn't treat me that way. So typically, when we relate to people, several distortions might be working together. Another cognitive distortion is assuming the facts, and there's 2 subtypes. There's mind reading, so we assume that we know what the other person is thinking when we really don't know for sure. No matter how well you know somebody, you can't assume what they're thinking. And then fortune telling, so you may not necessarily know what will come to be in the future, but you get yourself worked up over the possibility of something going wrong. People with this distortion tend to struggle with it. And with the tricky thing about automatic thoughts is it's not necessarily words or a full sentence. It's often not a full sentence. Sometimes it could be an image that comes up in your mind. So if somebody is fortune telling about a test, they might see themselves getting the test back and they have the F and they haven't even taken the test yet. Or some parents get worried about their children who might be on a vacation or on a mission trip, and they have these images that pop up in their mind, these horrific things that could be happening to their child. And so people often struggle with that one as well.
I could imagine that could come up in relationships too when it comes to jealousy and things like that, right?
Oh yeah,
Is
yeah,
that
for
true?
sure. Yeah, that would fall into that category.
Like imagining things about our spouse or our partner that is not true.
Right.
It's guessed, speculative.
Right.
And often I would imagine a lot of the things are based on people's trauma or something else that's happened that causes the thought patterns to run that way, not necessarily reality. Is that true?
Right. Yeah, definitely. And so that's why in the depression and anxiety recovery program, we don't just stop at the distortions. We have to dive a bit deeper with participants and help them identify their core misbeliefs that could be rocking their world, essentially. So, for example, somebody who has been molested or who has had some sort of trauma or abuse in their past, they typically struggle with a misbelief that relates back to their self-worth. So not being good enough. And often you'll also see that they don't feel like God cares for them. Has rejected them for some reason because of the guilt and the shame that they feel, and they feel disgusting. And based on how people have treated them, that could be reaffirming that core belief that they have about themselves, which is a really tough place to be in. And so as therapists, we want people to see the truth and to really recognize that another cognitive distortion is emotional reasoning. And so sometimes we assume that our emotions are facts. And so while we're feeling a certain way, it doesn't necessarily determine or say that that's what we are. So though I feel ugly, it doesn't mean I am ugly. And so we have to also work with participants to come out of that as well.
There's an example of this lady. She came to my office and she really believed that she wasn't loved by her mom. And that turned into a deeper belief that she is not loved or she cannot be loved. So maybe she shouldn't even accept. When people are giving her compliments, when people are trying to be nice to her, she would shy away because her belief is, no, but I'm not even loved by my mom. Why would these people be nice to me? You know, and she's a 50-some-year-old, woman, her whole life, and also having depression for a long time, many years, because of certain beliefs that she incorporated, and these were lies, pretty much. And once she realized it, she pretty much was free from thinking those things, and she started seeing life in a different way and herself in a different way. Started having more a sense of worth and value because she knew that her sense of worth and value didn't come from her mom. So it's pretty interesting how being aware of your thoughts can really help change the way you're feeling about yourself, about others. And it's a process that it doesn't come naturally. It takes a lot of practice because people build it throughout many, many years. So for somebody to come and suddenly say, yeah, I don't believe that anymore, it takes practice. It takes redefining yourself even.
And the other important piece with the mind is to understand that you're right. So whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So if you believe that I don't think I'll ever be able to get through fill in the blank, what you're struggling with, then you're right. However, if you believe, you know what? I was born a champion. I've been conditioned into mediocrity, and I am an overcomer. I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna get clear on what I actually want, and because of that, I'm gonna start taking action on the important steps to get there. And guess what? You're gonna be right that you can do it. So it's very dangerous if we don't monitor our self-talk, and it's extremely easy to fall into this toxic thought process because we've built this habit. 95% of the actions that we do during a day happen because of the habits we've built. So if 95% of our day is occurring and basically on repeat because we built that habit, then if we need to change and take a different course of action, we have to rewire our habits. And there's a lot of great tools that can help us. But the core principle is how we perceive where we're at, and this idea, whether we think we can or we think we can't, you're right. And so we have to live on this, not this hopium side that everything's just gonna work out, but no, you're going to be able to figure this out with tools like this docuseries and meeting the right people. As we get clear, then the path is gonna continue to unfold to where you need to go.
I think that a cognitive behavioral thought, I mean a distorted thought that I maybe struggle with is feeling like I'm the cause of certain things that happen.
Okay.
Yeah, like, and I still, like, I recognize that in myself, and yeah, and it's troubling for me in that, you know, things go wrong just because they go wrong, and that's life. And I've still got this kind of thing where I will have to go through this process where I'm like, this has happened because I did something that caused this. And like it gets really deep for me, like on that particular point. What would you say to me on that?
So that's actually one of the 10 cognitive distortions called blaming. And so people typically who struggle with that one, it can go either two ways. They can blame themselves for everything that has happened, or they can point the finger and say, that's not my problem, that's their problem. And so really what you would want to do as a CBT therapist is work with them and help them understand that, well, we have to take responsibility for our part and take ownership of, you know, our own actions and our feelings, and including our own thoughts, because remember, thoughts make you feel a certain way. Thoughts determine your feelings and your behaviors. And so you need to take responsibility for that portion, but don't take the responsibility of others. That's their part. And so that's really important to help people sort through when they're struggling with that distortion.
That's really helpful, because I can see that I've blamed myself, and I can see that I've blamed others. And being married, I can see where I've blamed my wife for that that distortion that I have in that area at times. You know, obviously not all the time, and thankfully, because I've been exposed to some of this over the years, my wife and I have had marriage counseling and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that for me as well, like I can track it back to being a child and often feeling like I was to blame for things that were going wrong. And it had a dual effect on me. Like it made me feel like I should do things and like be constructive and do meaningful things, which was, I don't know, perhaps the perversion of what that thing was actually for me. Like it was this kind of, it was ambition. I was an ambitious child. But then it was this inability to control and see that, well, things could happen and it wasn't my fault, but I didn't really learn to fully distinguish those things from each other. And
so typically people who accept a lot of the blame and responsibility, especially if that was a childhood wound for you, you know, you might even struggle with a core belief that you have to be competent and really good in all these different areas in order to feel loved and worthwhile, and that goes back to self-worth, and the fact that we try and help people understand that their worth is not based on what they have done or what they're going to do in the future, that their worth remains the same no matter what, and that God's love for them does not change.
How do you do that when somebody is agnostic or atheist or just have given up on faith, religion, or anything like that? How do you deal with that?
Typically I point out, you know, you can use a new life as an example for a lot of things. And so I talk with them about babies and when they're born into the world and how, you know, they didn't have a choice. And they're just here, and how much are they worth? And we talk about that, and just the value of their life, you know, and the fact that they haven't done anything yet, and they haven't failed really at anything yet. They haven't had to seek the A in school, you know, and they haven't failed the test, didn't get the promotion yet, and yet they're still so incredibly valuable just for who they are.
What were some of the things that were different that you learned at Beautiful Minds?
The biggest thing was to stop blaming myself, and that people, it's very common for people to be victimized, but if you decide you're a victim, you stay in that role and you don't ever get out of it. And that was huge for me, revelation. That and learning to quiet my mind. Because I always had racing mind, racing thoughts, grinding on things that I could not solve, replaying scenes in my head of arguing with my wife, yelling at my kids. It was basically living a nightmare, and I was the cause. It took a lot of talking. The therapist, the doctor spent probably about almost 2 hours with me the first time. Just to kind of get a very good understanding of where I was coming from and what I've been suffering with. And just the way of talking and the way of thinking, she helped me change my thought patterns, helped me quiet my mind. You know, she said, if you can't solve it, you're a brilliant person, you're a centered person, you're a sensitive person, you would have solved it in a few minutes if it was solvable. You're grinding on things that you can't solve. You literally have to forgive and move forward. And concentrate on the future and not so much on the past. I felt an instant rapport with her. I felt I could be vulnerable and just lay it all out for her. And she basically was able to say, this is the right train of thought, this is not the right train of thought. This is a dangerous way of thinking, this is a good way of thinking. You know, she gave me books to read for homework. Family First was one of them. The Body Keeps the Score was another one. Amazing books. It made me feel like there are thousands of people out there like me, and they're actually saying the same exact words that I was saying, and it made me feel really good that I'm not alone. And she was just very, very easily helping me to sort through the right way and the wrong way to go about moving forward with my life, and even the way of training my thinking, and and how to redirect your thoughts. So that you don't have these spinning thoughts in your head driving you crazy. My mind is actually quiet now all the time. And my wife even asked me, what are you thinking? And I smile at her and I go, not a thing. And that's the greatest thing ever, because I've been suffering with this since I was actually a teenager, or even longer than that.
Most of the time we don't realize that we have disordered thinking. We have grown up in an environment that has reinforced that these are normal thinking patterns. It's not until we're able to actually really step outside of ourselves, in a sense, and evaluate our thinking rationally that we're able to realize these distortions. Our brain develops neural pathways that transfer information. Say, someone has a habit of smoking when they're stressed. When they encounter a trigger that induces a stress reaction, their automatic neural pathway that has been formed will go straight to the action of smoking as a solution. The more they do this, the more trodden the pathway becomes. If they were able to decide they wanted to quit smoking, then they would have developed a new neural pathway. The problem is that old pathway has been used so repeatedly that it's well formed, and the new pathway is like creating a new path through the woods. It takes time for it to become well worn and become the default pathway. This time of altering habits can be very difficult because of this process. Yet, if we understand how it works, it can help us learn to work through it. For example, if you wanted to practice a more healthy form of stress relief, such as a spiritual practice like prayer, you could decide to pray every time you encounter a stress trigger. Initially, your mind would want to go to the smoking solution, but if you were consistent, your brain would eventually see the neural pathway to prayer as the best solution for stress, and it would become your new habit. That's how amazing our minds are. Previously, the mind was thought to be set after a certain age, such as the old adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. However, recent research has shown that our brains are plastic and moldable. They are constantly changing and adjusting to new stimuli and circumstance. This is called neuroplasticity, and it's how we're able to change habits and thoughts and feelings.
When we talk about neuroplasticity, there are neurotrophins in the brain, which are chemicals that the brain releases to actually help the brain to grow. And one of those neurotrophins is BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And you can think about it kind of like brain fertilizer, because it helps the nerve cells to grow, it helps them to make healthy connections. And one of the important things to understand about BDNF is that it's not formed as BDNF, it's actually formed as pro-BDNF. And so BDNF is brain fertilizer, but pro-BDNF is actually kills brain cells and kills the connections between brain cells. So what makes the difference whether pro-BDNF exists or it gets cleaved by an enzyme to BDNF to actually become brain fertilizer? Well, the difference is the activity in that particular area of the brain. In other words, if we are using a certain part of our brain, then there's an enzyme that comes and cuts that pro-BDNF into BDNF, and that will actually help to enhance that particular part of the brain, and that particular part of the brain will grow. But if we don't use a certain part of the brain, then that enzyme will not be there, and pro-BDNF will stay as pro-BDNF, and that part of the brain will actually start to slowly degenerate and be destroyed. And so there's the saying, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? And that's exactly why. So if we're talking about changing our brain and changing our thoughts, then it's all about which part of the brain we're activating. In other words, if we're thinking down a certain pathway, like I'm a really wonderful person and I have a lot of self-worth, then boom, that part of the brain is going to be cleaving and cutting pro-BDNF into BDNF, and that part of the brain is going to be enhanced. On the other hand, if I'm thinking about, oh, you know, I'm such a worthless person and I'm horrible, then again, that part of the brain, BDNF, is going to be activated and you're going to be enhancing that. The good news is, you know, if you are used to thinking of negative, dark thoughts all the time, then if you stop and you start thinking positive thoughts, then those old pathways will actually start to slowly shrink, because pro-BDNF will take over and actually cause atrophy in those old pathways, and you don't have to be stuck with who you were.
And can you do that even if you're older or you've had these thought processes for 20 years?
Absolutely. And that's the really exciting thing about especially the human brain. As it ages, it continues to be plastic. It continues to be changeable. And what they found is even in older human beings, in the hippocampus, which is the memory area of your brain, that really is important for learning, that there's 700 new nerve cells that are being born every single day. And to me, that gives me a lot of hope, because even as we get older, we can continue to change, we can continue to learn and grow and actually achieve optimal wellness for the rest of our lives.
Is that true? Like when you think a thought repetitively, it forms a thicker neurological pathway, and then energy passes through the place of least resistance, and so we are pushing energy through these bigger pathways because we consistently think these thoughts. Is that true?
Well, you're saying it in an even more advanced way than I do. I usually just tell people, like, if you go down a path over and over and over again, that's going to be an easy path to go down, versus if you change your path and go off the regular path and do a new one, well, eventually the weeds and the brush and everything and new trees will grow up in that path, and then you'll develop a new one over here. And so that's the way your brain works. Like you said, path of least resistance. The one that you go down is the one you keep going down. If you have negative thoughts, if you have negative self-talk, if you have negative beliefs about things, you'll keep going down that because it's easy. It's a habit. Any habits we have, we keep doing often, whether it's addictions or other things. And so sometimes we're addicted to our own thoughts. We keep going back to them. But if we develop a new path, then that one grows up, and then we have a new one that becomes the path of least resistance. So in essence, I'm helping people develop a new path of least resistance, but it takes a little resistance until you get to the least resistance.
So I was asking a few other people today about a whole challenge that we want to do about not having negative thinking, and some of the just what you would say to someone that's struggling with how to change their thoughts from focusing on the negative, and how they can change that to more positive thinking.
Like how to change their
like
thoughts?
How do you start that process?
Okay.
We're challenging people to, for a certain amount of time not
Yeah.
to have negative thoughts. Like, how do you start that process if you're used to this pattern?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that can be very difficult when we're starting to change anything is just that it's a habit. And it can be very difficult to change habits, especially under conditions of stress. And so one of the most important things when we're trying to change a habit is to actually start practicing when we're not stressed. Because if we're trying to do it when we're feeling pressure or stressed, it's almost impossible. But what we want to do is we want to find a time where we can feel a little bit more calm and practice self-awareness. What are my thoughts telling me right now? What's going through my mind? What's the self-talk that I usually tell myself? And then once we've identified and become aware of what I usually tell myself, then we have to start saying, okay, well, what's a healthy way of thinking about these things, and start replacing that. But again, we want to make sure that we're doing it at a time with low stress and practicing that over and over again, so that under periods of higher stress, it can start to become automatic and we can still start be thinking healthy thoughts.
So how is your life different right now?
Oh, it's hugely different. My wife has forgiven me, and my daughters have forgiven me. My sons forgave me about right away, but they're acting as I was, and I'm having to teach them how to deal with their anger now, and that's really hard to see them acting as I was acting, and being so far from that person now that I've learned to change my thought processes. I'm a completely different person in the way I approach things, the way I do things, even the way I drive. My night terrors have subsided. I don't scream in my sleep anymore and scare everybody in the house. And the biggest thing was getting my family back. And I'm living with them now. It's been only about a month that I've been back with them, but it's hugely different. They're still sensitive, but I'm patient and I understand.
And what did it feel like to feel wanted again by your wife?
That's so huge. That's all I wanted is, I wanted my wife back. I wanted my kids back. Because I devoutly love that woman. I adore her. And she's took it for a lot longer than she should have. Because we were married, we just celebrated our 13th wedding anniversary on March 26th. And we were on a trip. And that's when she told me that she forgave me. And I just was I can't explain the feeling. It's the most wonderful feeling ever. You know, all the work, all the time, all the suffering had been worthwhile. Going through the therapy and it was very, very hard. I wanted to give up a few times. But my oldest son, he's 17, and he said, "No, just keep going, Dad, just keep going."
What's it like to not have to be afraid anymore?
It's an amazing, great feeling. You know, my feet almost aren't touching the ground yet. I still feel like I'm on this huge high. It's just the greatest emotional feeling I've ever had. I feel like someone has taken an elephant off my chest, and I'm free to enjoy the simple things. I can enjoy smelling flowers and just walking in the park, where before I couldn't enjoy anything. I couldn't enjoy being in the public. I was scared. I had to see every door, every entry and every exit. I had to analyze every person that was in the crowd or anyone near me. I was afraid I was going to get in a fight or get in an altercation every second of every day.
So what would you tell someone that was, you know, going through PTSD or struggling with anger issues or depression and that was hesitant to go in and get help? What would you tell them?
I would say, go get help now. I waited far too long. My wife pleaded with me for years to go get help. And I said I would never, ever get help. You know, I said there's nothing wrong with me. You know, I don't need any help. I don't need anyone else's help. I'm a very do-it-myself kind of person. I don't ask for help. And that was just hard for me to accept that I actually needed help. I thought there was no hope. I thought there was no way to move forward positively. I didn't think there was any way out of this dark hole that I was in. But there is hope. No matter what you've experienced, no matter how you've been victimized, you don't have to be a victim anymore. You can set this bag of emotions you've been carrying with you down. And you don't have to carry it. You can listen to these people and the people that are in your life, the ones that love you, and the therapists and the doctors that are trying to help you. Open your heart, open your mind. That's the only way that things will get better. And understand that you can forgive yourself and other people will forgive you as you set that good example and you move forward positively. The greatest thing is to open your heart and your mind.
The first step is for you to identify what was the trigger, what was the event that started causing certain emotions. And it's good for you to know what are the emotions out there. You know, anger, sadness, anxiety, fear, helplessness, hopelessness, worthlessness. These are all emotions, right? So think back on one situation which was pretty stressful to you and write it down. What was the situation? And then write down what are the emotions that came with that situation. What were you feeling at the time? Write those down. And then ask yourself, what is it that I'm thinking that's leading me to feeling this way? So what are the beliefs that you have? So for example, your car breaks down in the middle of the street. That's a simple situation. Okay, it can be pretty stressful sometimes if you're late for work, for example. So you identify that that situation was a trigger for certain emotions, your car breaking down. So some of the emotions could be anger and irritation, some anxiety and fear, annoyance. Those would be some basic emotions, right? And maybe some sadness. And then once you recognize what are these emotions, ask yourself, what are the thoughts that are leading to my anxiety? Well, the belief that when I get back into work and I'm late, my boss is gonna come and he's gonna give me a lecture again, or it's not gonna be good, and I'm not gonna be able to do the things that I'm gonna do. Not only that, but I don't have money to pay to fix this. And my wife is gonna be complaining when I get back home. Okay, so those are certain beliefs and certain automatic thoughts that just jump in your mind. Oh, this is gonna be terrible. Okay, so those are the beliefs. And then the next step, identify if there are any distortions in the way you're thinking. So one of them would be jumping into conclusions, right? So when you say, oh, I'm gonna go back to work and my boss is gonna give me a lecture, wait a minute. Why does it jump into conclusion? Well, because I don't really know that that's what's gonna happen. I could actually call and I could tell them about it, and it might not be that bad, right? So the next step, after you've determined what was the distortion, you have to dispute that thought. So you have to really try to change it into something that goes against that distortion. So if I know that I'm doing some magnification of the problem, or if I'm doing some emotional reasoning, then I'll know what to do next. How am I supposed to be thinking? You know, and then once you put those thoughts in order, you'll be calmer. So you identify that emotion. What are the thoughts that lead to those emotions? What else can I think? Can I think differently? And what does that make me feel after I've changed? What are the new emotions that come up? Peace, maybe just a mild irritation, but not freaking out about it, right? So that would be a basic strategy to go through through the CBT.
Someone in the family lost a child. Okay, so yeah, well, I lost also my brother, which is my little brother, to bipolar. So that was the first experience of a big loss. And then my mother was poisoned, and my father was robbed and put in a trunk. So I've had tragedies in my life, and accidents have happened. Yeah, I had a brother die from cancer, and I had another brother have 2 brothers with heart attacks. My younger sister died, you know, of Alzheimer's. I mean, I've dealt with this stuff a lot. I'm a happy, fulfilled person, but I went through those feelings. I know what it is to go through them and heal your heart. You can heal your heart. Doesn't mean to be happy again, doesn't mean that you didn't love those people. That's so important to get. And they don't want, if you believe in them in the afterlife, they don't want you to be unhappy either. It's not a betrayal of them. You need to move on and be happy, but you can't move on unless your brain has to process that pain. Whenever there's pain, physical or emotional, it's imbalance. And then when it's emotional, that means it's irrational. So you process that? You process it. Oh gosh, I'm a master. I process thousands of people of this. I teach seminars. I stand up in front of the room. I tell them you're feeling this, 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 and they say it, and the emotions come out, whatever. We are so shut down as a society. Historically, we've always been shut down, but now we're at a time of evolution where, because our lower needs are met, our emotional needs are higher. And therefore, these emotions are available to us. And if they want to come up and we push them down by overeating or drugs, what will happen is we push them down, we go into denial of the emotions, then we stay stuck in the depression. Or if we're in denial of all the emotions, meaning, if, let's say, you're angry. Some people spend their whole lives being angry because they're not letting themselves feel what didn't happen, the disappointment, the sadness, the loss, and cry and feel sad. They're just angry. Well, they'll stay angry forever until somebody helps them find the vulnerable part that's sad, or the part of them that's deeper, that's afraid and scared. You know, and they're all irrational, scared I'll never be loved again, I'll never be happy again, nothing will ever happen. They're just stuck in, you did this to me.
In this culture, we're taught to shove everything down. We don't know how to process. We haven't learned how to process traumas, and we haven't learned how to process our feelings. We just shove them down. Because if we talk about them, we're afraid that we'll get a negative response, right? And when people come talk to me in my office, when they walk through that door, there's no judgment. They need to know that when they walk through the door, they can be who they are, they can feel how they feel, and it's okay. And a lot of people who come see me, I believe, are going through the same thing, because they're taught to shove it down, and they haven't found answers, so it just compounds and it gets worse. The problem keeps getting worse.
Wow, that's really helpful. And yeah, the silence of not reaching out, and I think about you now as the daughter. It's what, 16 years or so, or 12 years past the suicide of your own father, and I think about the longing that you have there to then, having passed through perhaps a situation that had some resemblance of what he went through, some resemblance of shielding something and some isolation that he felt that he had to create based on an identity that he'd created for himself, an identity that you'd created for yourself, which is based on performing and achievement and meeting society's standards and then suffering on the inside. When I think about the longing that you have, just like Dad, like if only you could just like reach out and let us know what you're experiencing, like we could help, even though you think we can't, like, or even if we can't help, I mean, we just want to know, we want to care about you, we want to suffer with you. We don't want you to, you know what I mean? What would you say to your dad? What would, like, if you could talk to him right now, or you could go back to the moment, because it's relevant to families that are watching, what would you say?
Just talk to me. Tell me what's going on. Let's find a solution together. I'll move mountains for you. We'll all move mountains for you. Please just tell us what's going on and let us help you figure it out. We'll figure it out together. We're a tribe. We're your family. We love you. Give us a chance to help you figure this out. That's what I would have said to him. Because what if we could have fixed it? What if we could have fixed it? But, we just don't know that now.
Any other special techniques that you would use through the day in order to remedy depression or anxiety?
Yeah, there are lots of things. One of the things, especially with anxiety, because that thought of I'm not good enough is kind of an anxious thought, sometimes just to stop and to take some deep breaths and slow things down, because I already feel like, I'm going way too fast if I'm amped up to get enough done to make myself feel better. So just to sit back and reflect on what are the things I've already done, do some deep breathing. Okay, that's good work for this time. I did something. And then another thing too that really helps is just being out in nature. There's something that slows us down and gets us to think more accurately about what we've been doing and what we've accomplished by being in nature. Sometimes just the music, tempo and the city beats, all the sounds and rustling of that seem to speed us up and make us think like we got to do more. And just being in that calm atmosphere kind of slows us down. So I encourage people to spend lots of time in nature and stuff when they have more time after work, or even with the family. Take your whole family if you need to spend time with them. Don't sit in front of the TV. That's usually that path of least resistance. Take the other path and go outside and take a walk with the whole family. I love it when I see families walking out together. Mom or dad's pushing the stroller, the other kids are walking, on their own, and they're all talking and everything. There's something really therapeutic about connection too. And connection can also slow us down. Being with other people and communicating, listening, that intimacy that comes from sharing, that's not just about getting the next thing done with your work colleagues or something like that, or even directives to your kids, get your room cleaned and all that stuff.
Yeah, excellent. Sunlight, does it play a benefit?
Absolutely. Sunlight is the precursor to melatonin production, which helps you sleep better at night. Sunlight is also good just for helping you feel better, period, throughout the day. And this is why a lot of people like to do tanning, because there's that serotonin boost that comes from being in the sun, that vitamin D that makes us feel better too.
Yeah. Okay, and hydration, does it play much of a role when it comes to depression, anxiety?
Absolutely. Our body needs to remove toxins. Toxins they thwart our mental well-being and stuff. So drinking a lot of water, flushing, we call it flushing, getting rid of all of that bad stuff. Even sweating is good, getting toxins out that way. We need to do that sort of thing.
That if there was just one cause of I'm just thinking bad thoughts, and if I just repeat affirmations, then everything's going to change. If there was just one cause of why you're exhibiting symptoms, then that could quote unquote be the cure or be the step that you need to take. However, in this day and age, it's a multifactorial stressor or stressors that are happening, that there are patterns that we've fallen into and habits of how we process the world, how we perceive the world, how we think, and how we act based on what we're exposed to. That's a big portion. But there's also this whole toxicity and chronic infection side, that if there was a young baby projectile vomiting when they were young and they've exhibited these emotional and mental symptoms for a long time, then that tells me that there's other things that are factors than just, I just need to believe that I'm going to be well. I just need to believe that I'm not stressed out. I just need to believe that I feel great. That I believe it's important to have those thoughts. However, it's very rare where just that thing is going to be the fix. So as you look at and evaluate your situation, it's important to identify what are all the source or sources of your health issues. The top ones that I see are chronic infection, such as Lyme disease, other bacteria like Bartonella, virus and viral infections such as Epstein-Barr. A very prevalent thing that we're seeing right now too is retroviruses, the HTLVs. These are viruses that actually do reverse transcriptase and embed in our DNA. And then upon stressors or getting stressed, they can actually get triggered. So they can be triggered 10 years later after being exposed. I see mold being a factor, whether you're living in mold, working in mold, or going to school if you're going to school in a moldy environment. I see parasite infection being a chronic epidemic and a source to having mental issues. There's actually a book called Your Brain on Parasites, and it goes into the research done on animals, how parasites will embed themselves into different insects or animals' brains and actually alter their behavior. And so it's clearly that's not a human where they did the research with some of those instances, but it doesn't seem that far-fetched that a parasite for a human can alter our personality, our thought process, when you know innately deep inside, like, this isn't me, but why am I thinking this? And then the other epidemic is toxins. Those are the four big things. And it's very easy, Jonathan, to get lost in the weeds, right? To be like, well, what about this? And go really, look at one branch or one tree in the forest and kind of forget the whole forest and the bigness. And that's where we want to really elevate and look from a 10,000 foot view or 20,000 or 30,000 looking down as to, where am I at? And then zoom in. So we don't want to just live up in the clouds, and we don't want to just live right on the ground at a microscopic level. We want to be able to look different, because that 30,000 foot view up looking down helps to give better direction, but the deep dive in allows us to break barriers and walls down that we need to focus with at times. And from a mental standpoint, if there is one thing to remember about mindset and perception, is this idea that it really comes down to that things are either happening to you or things are happening for you. And the moment, and this doesn't mean it's easy, but the moment that you're able to say that this is happening for me, everything shifts from being a victim of this is happening to me to really being an overcomer that this is happening for me. When I look back, and I had knee surgery when I was a senior in high school, and how it took me out of football, basketball. I had to have knee surgery between baseball seasons, and I lived and breathed sports, and I was really good at it. And that knee, if God could give me one different body part, I used to think it was give me a new knee. And what I realized was that my path wasn't in sports. My path was in health. And after I went through knee surgery, I realized that it was the health world that I was destined for. I realized that that was the path. And I didn't see it right away. I actually carried a lot of animosity and anger toward my knee. In the day that I realized that my knee was for me and not against me or happening to me, everything shifted. So it's important to look at your own life and ask the question, where have I been saying, why is this happening to me? And how can we switch that to say this has been happening for me?
Did you ever blame God for what happened to your knee?
Oh, I cried out, prayed, and I'm getting goosebumps and chills right now thinking about it, because it brings me back to that emotional feeling of just confusion, lost. Like, am I a defect? What's wrong with me? Why did this happen? And then as I progressed and started to really do deep dives, evaluating my processing and why do I have this feeling toward my knee, I realized that it was because I had this perception that it was happening to me, not for me. And if it wasn't for the knee, I wouldn't be on the path I'm at. I would have never met my wife, which means I never would have had our daughter, would have never been married to her, and probably would not have been in the health realm, being able to help and impact lives. And when I look at it from that, it brings this joy and happiness and gratitude instead of this anger, frustration, and hatred. And it doesn't mean that if you're in the valley right now, you're in the trenches, that it's easy to feel that. However, just know that as you progress and move forward and get better, that you're going to be able to look back and actually have gratitude and thankfulness rather than resentment, frustration, and anger.
Everyone has that ability. And I don't want to put something on someone that they think is overwhelming, how am I going to change overnight? Because that can, quite frankly, freeze people. But little by little, step by step, if your heart is there, you'll know exactly what to do. And for me, it was a miracle. I have no other way of describing it but to say it was a miracle. And then I slowly started to change behaviors, but my mindset was changed like this. So I learned how to exercise, I learned how to eat, I learned how to use essential oils, I learned how to treat people better, I learned how to think better, I learned how to pray and meditate. I learned what hope was. But you could change right now. And before you press pause, before you turn off this documentary, you need to commit to changing how you think. You need to keep that at the forefront of your very existence. You need to have manifestations and healing professions and positive affirmations that you print out. I have them on my website if you want them, but write your own. Put them on the mirror in your bathroom and speak them out every day. You need to remind yourself that you're beautiful. Say things like, I'm beautiful, I have worth, I'm talented, I'm smart.
We've seen in this episode how important our subconscious belief systems and thoughts are. By unraveling our toxic thoughts and correcting them, we can move towards greater happiness and daily contentment. A great way we can find out how healthy our thoughts are is by using cognitive behavioral therapy techniques that our experts have spoken about today. I would recommend you begin seeing a qualified professional to work through these things, but I also encourage you to begin to take action today. Of the distortions that were spoken about today, were there any that stood out or sounded familiar to you? Maybe you're like me and have the tendency to blame yourself or blame others for things that are out of your control or their control. Maybe you have a tendency to make judgments about yourself or your situation based on your emotions or how you're feeling. Or maybe you might have a negative mental filter where you tend to focus on the negative things and filter out all of the good. Our thoughts have the ability to bring us down or lift our spirits. So I encourage you to pay attention to them and correct them if they aren't helpful and begin to see change. Did you enjoy this episode? Are you feeling hope? Are you seeing that it's possible? It's possible for you, and it's something that is a clear pathway that if you follow it, you will get results. You will see your life transform. This is cause and effect. The problems that we're facing are due to actual things that we're going through. It's not in our heads. It's not some genetic thing that we're predestined to that we'll never be able to turn around. We have the power. We have the tools. Isn't that liberating? Isn't it amazing? If you can believe that one thing, The world is your oyster. You'll be unstoppable. You'll see what's possible. You'll see the promises that are in store for you. For me, I believe that God has just given us so much in life, and I feel that we are really given the keys from God through these amazing experts that have given their life to studying the natural aspects of medicine and the root causes for the problems that we're experiencing today. And through that key, we can unlock the health that we need to have the life that we long to have with our family, to take care of our spouse, our children, our grandchildren, our friends, our extended family members, to be clear and present with them, to be able to give our lives to mission, to services that are meaningful to us. You need your mind to do that, and I'm here to help you take those steps that you need to have a clear, vivacious mind that is happy and on fire in a good way. It's firing properly, having the spark of life within it because it's fueled with the right things and the toxic triggers that were harming it are uprooted. That's what we're doing in this next chapter. When you take action today and support our mission, you'll be supporting our cause so we can continue getting this message into the world, and you'll be supporting yourself. You'll be having a tool that's in your home library. You can watch, rewatch, send it to your family and friends, get them to check it out. You'll get a free buddy pass, so you'll be able to get an extended pass there so your friend can log in and watch themselves, or you'll get a second printed set of the major portion of the series, so that way you're able to share that precious tool with your loved ones with that double set that you'll be given. These are some of the amazing tools. You'll be able to ask your questions live on our live question and answer calls so you can get help as you go through the protocol for depression, anxiety, and neurodegenerative diseases. We're going to be diving deep in this 6-module course, and each week you'll be live on our calls, and you can look at the schedule that we have. Just click the link below and you can see we have a limited time offer. Please don't miss out on that. We're really giving away this really special discount because we want to reward people for taking action on their health, and we want to make it possible for everyone. And when you take action, you're supporting us to keep going, keep spreading this message of love, of healing, of truth into the world to help save and change lives forever. And you are a part of that. When you take action, you're actually helping other people. And I'm not kidding you, just in the same way you received this, we were able to give this to you for free. Many, many more people. Hundreds of thousands, even millions of people that have not yet seen this. And maybe one day we'll even reach billions of people. We'll see lives changed. We'll see people that have given up hope. We'll see all the people that would have committed suicide, but because they applied this knowledge and truth that they've learned in this series, their lives were changed forever. And it's because of people like you that choose to support this, choose to get behind people that are out there, whether it's me, whether it's somebody else, getting behind people that are doing good work, that makes sense, that helps to heal. So get behind people that you trust and you like their mission, because that's the only way we're going to be able to change this world. If you believe in what my wife and I are doing, help us continue. Help us continue to get this message to other people that need it desperately. Help us to help heal the heart and mind of a suffering world by giving tools that help us be our best selves, and let us shine our light at the beauty of who you are, the beauty of who this world is made up of. Wonderful, creative, intelligent, loving individuals that are so often impeded by so many struggles that we don't understand. And it leads us to be often our worst selves. And it's got to stop. The judgment's got to stop. The judgment that we have over ourselves, the judgment we have over others, it's got to stop, and we've got to heal. Let's commit our lives to healing. Be a part of that mission. Help us to get this mission, to heal more lives. Take action on your own healing journey. Be your best self. Don't sell yourself short. Never sell yourself short in life. Be your very best self. Protect your heart, protect your mind. And the Bible has an incredible verse on this. It says, protect and guard the heart. Guard the heart, for out of it spring all the issues of life. Now, the heart is really deeply connected to the gut and the mind. And when you speak about, I give you my heart, it's actually talking about giving the deepest part of ourselves. And all of our thinking comes from our gut function and from our brain function. So protect, guard your heart. Guard your body, guard your brain, your gut by doing the right things for your health, and take action. I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Click the link below to learn more about what we're doing to help support you, and I'll see you really soon.